A very good morning to everyone. Today I have come up with one more text that is Indian women are never taught how to be alone, and that's a problem. Okay, this text particularly is written by Kavita Rao, and she speaks about the women, especially the women who were depending on someone, maybe their father or maybe the husbands. So now, if you depend on someone, you do not realize really the independency or the freedom, also we can say, that you have when you're alone. Okay. Even when you're alone, I think there could be so many things that we might be digging our own self. Okay, we might, so many thoughts might be coming in our mind that we have to come up in life. Okay. So this particular text is one of that where Kavitara speaks herself about herself, where she was also a depending woman, and later on how she realized the transformation from being dependent to being independent. She quotes various examples here, maybe the examples of a student who was in the bank who was not able to write the check, her own examples where she was uh, spending every time with grief, with sadness. She didn't want to do any work by herself. She didn't want to learn anything. No, she says for few years it's went on like that, like this. Only in the second year, she started that she has to learn something new. I mean, uh, she has to be independent instead of depending on someone every time. And she comes to know the value of being independent. She mentions various aspects that we'll see in the upcoming slides. So moving on to the next, here we have a group discussion, and this were the points or these were the questions I have posted you uh, so that we can discuss on this. Okay, this also will help us to know many more things. So I have given an image here that woman always a multitasker, right? She goes outside to work. She at, works at home too, taking care of the children, maybe family members, and she has no holiday, so called as holiday, for her work. Either she has to work outside, at the same time she has to come back home and she has to take care of the household chores as well. So about the author is here. Author is Kavita Rao, was born in Bangalore and she was grown in UK, Iran and Bahrain, and she studied law. Okay. She was a art student and she studied law. Then she began her journey in India, and that is in 2006. And she also has written a book, first book that was Lady Doctors, where she speaks about Indian female doctors. And this book was also shortlisted for the Tata Literary Awards in the same year, that is in 2021. Okay, moving on to the next about the text. The text begins like this. She mentions about January 2012, where she speaks about her husband, where he had to work away from her outside the family. And after her marriage, they decided to live together, but it was not possible to her because of the work. And she had to be alone doing all the household chores in the family and so on. And for many years, it went on like this. And now, in these years, she realizes herself what are the works can be done by herself. And she also, during this time, she also feels or she also realizes that she was not only the single woman who was struggling with the long distance relationship, but there were other women. It may be due to various reasons. Maybe they were unmarried, they were widowed, they were divorced, or they were living in the long distance relationship. So these were the different reasons where women were living alone in the families. So now she says in India we have 72 single women who were living in the uh, families who are alone. Okay, now there could be widows, divorces, unmarried, and very other, and some maybe they are separated from their husbands too. Now, she gives one example from the movie Queen. So she says, our culture doesn't teach us to be alone. Now, if we see our own background, we are not alone, right? Obviously we have someone to depend on. So either it could be a father or husband whom we are depending on, or maybe brothers whom we depend on more. And she quotes an example of the Bollywood movies too. She says, if you see the movie or if you watch the movie, you find very hardly few dialogues or conversations are given to the women. Okay. Then she quoting the movie Queen. Here the it was she says it was a revolutionary movie where the woman was a heroine. Woman was a female was a protagonist role here, and she accepts to be being independent. Okay, moving on to the next, she also gives examples from the TV ads. You might have observed the TV ads. The women are specially placed in the family ads, right? Either could be a detergent, maybe a kids' clothing, or maybe a tea or chai or coffee. So in these ads, the women are more placed. Maybe to give domestic emphasize women, how to women have to live happily. So in the family too we observe this, right? Mother cooks for everyone, and she tries to prepare the dishes which the family members like, right? It could be from the breakfast up to the dinner. She sees that whatever she prepares, it was liked by everyone, it is tasty, right? And it was this is what expected by the mother in the family. So moving on to the next, so this she gives about the ads, how the woman has been picturized in the ads. So moving on to the next, she says she gives an example of her mother who was living with her husband, and when she was 64 years of old her husband died. And now so far, uh, this husband and wife, they were very close to each other. They spend uh, time in each other's company. Okay. Now suddenly her husband left her, means he died. So now what she has done, now she is completely alone. She was not used to, her mother was not used to be a single woman. So now what has happened, she feels alone. So now, to cover up this, what she has done, she has started gardening, she started listening to the music, spent time in family programs, charity works, and recently she says she has been using the internet too. So few months back, she also traveled along with the other single women. She has traveled the places like Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh, and she used this tragedy into opportunity. Okay, where when her husband died, she was not completely down. She did not spend her time in grief or crying always, or sitting simply in a place or grumbling for the situation. No. What she has done, she has changed this situation into an opportunity. So now what she has done, though she misses her husband badly, but there is something else to cover up her life. So that is what she has done in her life, in her mother's life. Okay. Moving on to the next, she speaks herself. Kavita Rao, she speaks herself, telling that how she has spent time, how what are the difficult situations that she has faced in her life, and how this has changed her life. So now she says, soon after marriage, initially from the beginning, it was time of grief. She was very sad. She was denying everything. She didn't want to do anything. Okay, there was a denial. Then refused to accept anything, failed to learn household works in the husband's house. There was anger for everything. She was getting angry. Okay, so this was initially from the beginning. This is what she felt. Then gradually, what happened? There was a painful acceptance. She accepted everything. She accepted the life as it comes. Now she can't change her life. She can't change her situation. Only thing she has to accept as it comes. Okay. So she did not depend much on her husband. Okay. Now what happened? She was independent that much more than she had imagined. So initially in the beginning she didn't know whom to call for the service, maybe for the AC, maybe refrigerator, maybe any other electronic gadget, maybe for the washing machine. She didn't know whom to call. But later on, gradually she learns everything. So list of course that dismissed and never bothered to learn. For a year, I was distressed, nothing worked. So as she neglected everything, nothing worked in her life. So only when she tried to accept, everything changed into positive. So second year began with lot of acceptance. She accepted everything. To fix a leaky tap, printer, loose TV connection, I was learning, even the kids were told to the same. So it is not only she learned, even her kids were taught the same. So this gradually the changes that had taken place in her life. Now few examples have been quoted in the text by Kavitara, mentioning that the difficulties of a woman from her husband's house to her from her father's house to her husband's house. Father's house, she was well taken care. She was completely under the shadow of her father. Nothing was bothered, no worries in life. Everything was taken care by the family members, especially by the father. Soon after that, after her marriage, she comes to her husband's house. And here the real life starts. Okay, she has to take care of everything. So the struggle the woman undergoes here has been explained by her. Okay, the woman knows what are the difficulties she has faced and she is going to face in this what is a period of time. Okay. Then next example she gives about a woman who was borrowing always the money from her husband for 40 years and she didn't even know how to uh, take or withdraw money from the bank. We have examples maybe even today who completely depend on husband. They may not know how to operate online banking account, maybe to draw cash from the ATM. So we have ample of examples for these too. So people who depend on someone will always depend. So here, when they leave us, so that moment uh, they might face as they are nowhere. So that's the reason. Learn everything. Don't depend on someone uh, for everything, right? So one more example she gives about a woman, one of her friend who always traveled with her husband. She never traveled alone. Okay, always husband would accompany her. So one more example has been given of a student at the bank, a young student who asked her to fill the check. Then she asked why. So she says, the student says, so far has her father had filled the check. So now the student, educated, didn't know how to fill the check. The student depended on her father. But moving on to the next, men and women taught select skills bound, co-independent with shackles called love, family, and culture. So both men and women. So we have this concept of family, right? We have ultimately we have a family. We have to work for the family, right? There is someone who's depending on us. There is someone whom we are depending to. So under the shackles of love, family, and culture, we are struggling, right? So this is what she says. The women is always told to love the family, take care of the family, see the needs of the family, and transfer or transmit that culture that she has to her kids or to the coming generation. Then moving on to the last part, she says how she discover about herself. Being alone, how she discovered. Even her solo trips made her to be independent because she could eat everything what she wanted. There is no one to restrict her. Okay, the woman who wanted to be, it is not she wanted to be free, but the situation has uh, had done her that. Okay, she was completely alone. She traveled alone. She could eat the food that she could eat, maybe the food, junk food that she liked. When there is someone with us, we will be might be restricted, right? So now she could eat everything here. So that part she enjoyed most, being alone. So one more is that she says, I have written non-fiction books. So in on December 2015, she says, in 6 months she could publish the book. And for years, I had been telling myself I had no time to write one. So when she was depending on someone, or maybe soon after marriage, for years together, she was telling there is no time. But when she alone, she discovered there is time. She could write, or she could uh, do, or she could get what she wanted. So in the beginning, she was giving lame excuses, very silly excuses. She was tired. Okay, thinking about the protagonist, having people in the room. So all this disturbed her. But now what happened? What has happened? She was able to discover herself. She was able to write many more books. So now she says, nearly have finished 120 books last year. So at the end, what she says, I expect my long distance marriage to end next year. So now she says ultimately it is going to end because her husband is going to come back. Okay, they are going to live together again. I'll be glad to be with my husband again. So she says, it is not that being alone I have enjoyed a lot, but even she is very happy that she's going to live with her husband. I'm so grateful that I have an opportunity to learn to be alone. Now she says for that time period where she had a long distance relationship. For that time period, she says, I'm happy to I'm very grateful because that part of life has taught me too many things, and I have overcome it, and I have lessons to learn, and she's learned many more lessons. And she says, she gives one example telling that now in case your husband passes away, so that time I think you'll have to be in pain because so far you are depending on your husband or someone else. You ultimately you lose that person. Now she says, now once I have learned how to be alone without harassment, okay, so now I'll be able to alone even if I lose him. She doesn't expect him to be losing, but even that situation comes, she is ready to face that, but she will be fine. She will not be finding more difficulty because since she has already experienced to live alone, to depend on herself. So this is what uh, the chapter is about. That is, the Indian women are never taught how to be alone, and that's a problem. So thank you so much. She gives an example of